Hello everybody, I'm Silly. This will be part 5, chapter 5 of Susurrus of the Subdued, SOS. The masked man moved the miniature test tube off the burner with similarly sized metal tongs, using his free hand to grab a pipette. He brought both in front of himself, tilting the glass container ever so slightly to stick the tip of the dropper into the liquid. He then pulled some of the liquid into the pipette before setting the test tube back on its rack. Moving over to where the microscope resided, he sat down, grabbing a new slide. He held the glass steadily in his gloved hand, placing a drop of the liquid onto the slide. He then set the dropper back into its spot, keeping his space neat. Picking up small tweezers, not planning to even attempt to flatten the drop with his encased fingers, he grabbed the clear cover slip with the tips of the metal pinchers. Once it was aligned properly, the liquid evenly spread out, he placed the tweezers back in their correct area, tapping it into place so that it sat perfectly on the table. He set the slide down for only a moment, lowering the stage of the microscope in order to access it better, before picking the thin glass back up. The metal clips fastened around the slide as the man slid it into place, light flickering on with just a tap of the switch. The guy leaned forwards, adjusting the lenses, focus, and the position of the stage until he could see the cells correctly. His eyes scanned the area, taking in every detail. When a blue-colored cell came into view, however, he paused. His hands tightened around the dials, the skin on his forehead beginning to itch. The blue cell, or otherwise known as the quirk factor gene, was still there. Leaning back and letting go of the microscope, the person scowled. He had spent months at this point attempting to remove the gene from a person's DNA, and so far, he hasn't even come close to succeeding. Every test he's conducted so far has either led to no results or the cells dying within seconds. He was still too far away from his goal. As the skin on his forehead began to burn, he stood up violently, chair getting pushed back with the back of his knees with a gut-wrenching screech. It scraped the floor, creating an imperfection the man would later glare at. He planned to unglove his hand, reach out, and destroy the microscope for not showing him the results he wanted, before the door creaked open. Looking over his shoulder threateningly, hand frozen midair, the man's gaze caught onto his masked employee. "Overhaul?" Nomoto asked, voice slightly muffled by the black bird mask he wore to obscure his face. Kai pulled the hem of his glove back, readjusting it on his hand, but not letting go. He then took in a deep breath, ignoring the itch buzzing underneath his skin. "What is it?" "It's about the job you had me and Dataro take over. The one about the quirkless person you requested?" he replied, stepping into the room calmly and shutting the door behind him. Chisaki's shoulders relaxed minutely. "Have you found one?" "Not really," Nomoto informed. "However, I did find something to at least move the search along." Overhaul turned to look at him fully, beckoning him on silently. Moving to pick up the fallen chair, Shin continued. "I was looking into the underground more, to see if I could find something like a traffic ring, when I heard about a new informant." He relocated the chair back into its spot, making sure to line it up perfectly to the desk's edge. All the while, Chisaki's eyes followed him, taking in the information. "I've heard they're good." He turned to look at his boss, hands still resting atop the back of the stool. "Doesn't question things either." "Whatever it takes, Nomoto. I can't get anywhere without one," Overhaul replied, crouching down while he finally slipped his right glove off. Placing the tips of his fingers over the scrapes in the floor, the both of them watched as they slowly faded away, the tiles under his hand becoming perfect once more. However, hives appeared on his skin at the cost of fixing the imperfections. Standing up, Kai kept his elbow bent so that his hand was not touching anything besides the air. "When you contact them, tell them the price is whatever they want it to be. At this point, I don't care what means we have to go to in order to develop the bullet. As long as I can purge the world of its imperfections, I'll pay any price needed." He then turned to walk away, not waiting for a reply. "Now go, so I can wash my hand." Nemoto nodded, turning to leave. Shin walked into the room dedicated to researching. It would be a rather plain room, if not for the dozens of papers strewn everywhere. The walls were still white, but compared to the rest of the compound, it had a bit more life to it. The facility's theme was supposed to be bare in order to keep it sterile, due to the fact Chisaki couldn't stand germs. This room, however, was the one exception. The man never came into this space, meaning they didn't need to clean it as often. Not to mention, it was rather difficult to keep a place clean when you had to constantly move things around, add information, or remove items. Furthermore, the person he was working with was a complete slob. Said man was currently sitting in a chair, feet propped up on his desk, and alcohol in hand. Nemoto's eyes narrowed behind the lenses of his mask. "Deidoro, did you at least get the email set up before relaxing?" Sakaiki tilted his head back, taking a long swig of his bottle. He then licked his lips, pulling the bottle away from his mouth. "Email? Why the hell would I write one of those?" he slurred. Shin sighed, rolling his eyes soon after. Not bothering with his colleague anymore, he moved over to his own desk that sat next to the drunkard. Pulling his chair out, the man masked in black put in the password to his computer. Once it loaded in, he turned his attention away from the screen to grab the paper that contained the analysis contact information. Providing a quick, hidden side glare to his impaired colleague, Nemoto looked back to the monitor, his fingers spreading to provide his muscles a light stretch before they were back on the keyboard, getting ready to start a message. From Nemoto Shin, 8admissions@gmail.com, to Deku, deku.analysis0@gmail.com, sent Monday, May 15th, 2062, 2:48 p.m. Subject, job opportunity. Dear Deku-san, recently, me and my team have taken on a case of some sorts after months of it being passed around. After weeks of no leads, me and my colleague have stumbled across your name. Your reputation in the underground for having in-depth research would help us greatly. However, as this is sensitive information, I do not feel like it is appropriate to even mention what it contains over email. Furthermore, your pay will be determined by whatever you request. After all, we're asking you for in-person help rather than your usual provide and leave services. If you choose to help us in this, please meet up with us at Osamu Depository on Tuesday, May 16th, around noon. Do not reply to this email. Sincerely, Nemoto Shin. Midoriya's feet pounded against the concrete with a panicked rhythm, clammy hands fisted to push off of the air by his sides. The sound of angered and cruel jeering, accompanied by unfaltering footsteps, could be heard from behind. Izuku pushed himself to the edge, his legs burning with each step. His heart pounded in his chest erratically with both terror and exertion. Glancing back, the green teen almost flinched. The proximity between both him and his bullies had shortened sometime during the chase. Teeth gritting to keep himself from yelling out, the boy kept pushing himself. If he got caught, who knows what would happen? One of the last times he got beat up, they broke his nose, but he didn't run that time. This time, however, he tried to get away, not wanting his nose to somehow get re-injured once more. He knew he shouldn't have, but the fear of having it messed up more had become too much. After all, the 2 injuries sustained to his face had made it difficult to breathe, at least when it came to his nose. Huffing out tired breaths through his mouth, Izuku looked forward once more. The train station was in sight, the security checkpoints as well. One of his hands reached back, blindly searching inside the side pocket of his bag for his keycard. When his fingers didn't immediately feel the hard plastic, he shot another fearful glance back. They were closer. He pushed his hand deeper into the pocket, desperately trying to find it. His heart rate spiked, and the boy's lungs burned with the stress of his restricted breathing, the sweatiness of his limbs not helping in the search at all. When the tips of his fingers barely touched the edge of the card, his torso tilted to the side, hand practically slamming into the plastic and yanking it out. Izuku would have sighed in relief if not for the fact he was running out of air and his body felt like it was going to collapse at any moment. He pushed himself harder, knees and ankles screaming in pain. He stopped for only a moment in order to swipe his card, waiting with bated breath until the scanner glared at him with a red light, telling him to try again. The boy's breath caught while he uncurled his fingers to look down at the item. Practically punching himself mentally, Midoriya flipped over the plastic before swiping it again. This time, the light shone green and the lock released the spinning rods. Moving his hand, along with the card, back to his body, he pushed through the gate. Without looking back, Izuku ran towards the stationary train. In the boy's mind, he prayed to Kami that he'd make it in time. Anxiety raced through his veins, adrenaline pumping. However, the moment the muffled steps of soul-hitting pavement turned to hollow metal, all of it was replaced with bone-deep exhaustion. He moved, paced slower but breath quick, to collapse in a seat with a view of where he came from. The chair was uncomfortable and cold under the child's body, but nonetheless, he allowed himself to relax into it. He let his eyes slip shut, and distantly, he heard the sounds of the loudspeaker and the train's doors shutting. Deku paid it no mind, though, brain already on the topic of sleeping. He shifted, his head tilting back to rest against the cart's window. It was cold against his scalp, filling in for the comfort that an ice pack could provide for an aching skull. His nose felt like it was on fire, pain radiating through his head from the appendage. Ever since he had broken it, his nose never seemed to function properly. It felt like it was clogged all the time, and his nostrils whistled with every heavy breath he took in. In recent days, the boy had been breathing out of his mouth more often. It was weird for him, sure, but it kept his peers, more specifically Bakugo, from glaring at him out of annoyance. Izuku wonders in the back of his mind if it would have been different if he had gone to a doctor for his injury, rather than treating it himself. However, the boy knows that nothing could be done for it now. That's why it's only an afterthought. Eyes opening to set their gaze upon the ceiling above, Midoriya sighed heavily. When he got home, Izuku just wanted to sleep. However, the boy knew if he wanted to keep up with his long list of requests from his analysis account, he couldn't take breaks. Yawning, Deku pushed the lid of his laptop open. He typed in his password like normal, pulled up his inbox like normal, and checked each email that was sent in, like normal. Despite everything being his usual routine, there was one message that was completely out of place. The email stated how the sender, Nemoto Shin, needed help with a project he and his colleague were assigned. Everything was normal about it, all things considered, but the fact they wanted to meet in person sent warning bells through the boy's head. Granted, he usually does his meetings in person, but that was on his own time and when the analysis was already done. They wanted him to come during school hours and possibly do the analysis in person. He wasn't completely against it, if the preteen was being completely honest. They said they'd pay any sum he named. He'd be able to help his mother with the bills. However, if he took up the offer, he'd miss school. Midoriya had never really been one to miss school, going even if he was sick or injured. If he missed, there would be no one to tell him what he actually needed to make up. Just the teacher handing him a large stack that the boy knows was made specifically for him. A stack that, keep in mind, takes him days to complete. Not to mention, he doesn't have any friends or classmates that would be willing to let him copy notes. It'd be easy for him to skip, though. After all, his mother left the house before him. Despite the circumstances, the money would be far worth it. Over the past nearing 3 weeks that Deku had made a name for himself, he's learned how much he should charge for each detail a client wanted. Quirks, how they worked, and the fighting style of a person were around the more expensive side, due to the fact those were the hardest things to analyze. The lowest pay would come from something like someone's personality or locating a person. Some of his clients had come to him with strange requests, so by this point, Izuku had the prices memorized. He'd be able to come up with a price on the spot. Though that didn't stop the constant question of why people that had the most mundane jobs asked him for the most thorough analyses. On the other hand, this person could be a criminal trying to lure him into a trap. Unlikely. He was worthless. No criminal would be after him. Maybe the police then? It would make sense, actually, given the term classified information. If it was the authorities trying to contact him, then that means his name finally reached them. He had already planned to send out an email to a hero named Eraserhead tomorrow in order to give him his data and to spread his name. This was just speeding things up. The man was an underground hero centered in Naruhata, elusive, and had too many flaws to his costume. The pro was dressed in a simple black suit, utility belt, yellow goggles, and a scarf. It was simple in order to not draw attention, but the floating hair ruined that aspect. Furthermore, if the style of his goggles were changed to a more sealed-off design, he wouldn't have to worry about debris or dust being kicked up into his eyes. After all, the current look they had provided little to no protection. Shifting in his seat, Izuku clicked off of his email. He was getting distracted from his job. His mouse moved across the laptop screen, pulling up the few familiar sites Deku used, before he opened the search engine. His plan was already made, so there was no need to dwell on the aspects of it further. He would send out the email to Eraserhead before he left, so by the time he got back from Osamu Depository, there would, hopefully, be a reply in his inbox. Alright, everybody, that concludes Chapter 5, Part 5 of Susurrus of the Subdued, SOS. Please make sure to check out the Discord if you haven't already, if you'd like to get updates easier, get connected with people within the fanfiction community, make requests for a podfic, and more. The link to the server will be in the description. Now, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for listening.